So Joseph, thank you for being here this morning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it. So you own Druther Homes.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that how you pronounce
Druther.
it?
That's how we say it. But
Druther.
I know phonetically it's supposed to be Druther, but
I think she was
we're
saying
weird, so.
Druther this morning. I was
Yep.
saying Druther, but I'm more Southern than she is. She's
Yeah.
technically from the North, so, but don't hold that against her.
it's okay. I am too.
Great. Now I'm out.
I've been down here long enough though that it's this is home. So
There you go. So tell us a little bit about your business.
yeah, so I run Druther Homes. It's a new construction home building company. We build spec houses. So that means that we buy land without a buyer in mind. We build the house that we design ourselves, and then at the end of it, we list it for sale. So there's a lot of people who know spec houses. They might think of H&H neighborhoods or these kind of cookie cutter homes. That is not what we're doing. So we are buying very pretty nice lots in usually gated subdivisions on golf courses, those types of things. And our spec homes can range from $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million in this area, which is pretty considered luxury or high end. So those are the types of homes that we're building. We specialize in, and that's the nuts and that's kind of like the crux of what we do, the product that we sell. But more than that, what we're trying to do is build a business as a ministry. So that's been kind of this evolution that we've been on, or this growth that we've been on for the last couple of years, with the idea of, I'm a Christian, my wife's a Christian. You don't have to be a Christian to work at our company, but we are trying, how do we use our business for good in the world? And it's something that somebody kind of challenged me on a few years ago. So I started getting involved with Christian business owner groups and those kinds of things. And so over the last couple of years, we've been kind of on this journey of, hey, how do we use our business more to advance the kingdom? And so that's kind of evolved and grown. And we've got, a corporate chaplain now. We've got, this buy one, give one program where every house we build and sell here, we build and give away a house over in Mexico or Nicaragua or Honduras or Venezuela, those types of things. And so that's kind of where we are in our business right now.
So spec homes, like you said, H&H homes, and not to bash any other company,
Yeah.
but you start thinking of the box build.
Correct.
On this street, you can see this house, and then on the street over, it's the exact same house, but the dormers are flipped onto the other side, or it's a
Right.
different color. But you do more, it's spec house, but with a custom
Correct.
feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
How'd you get into building and then getting up to that level?
So when we started, I started in plumbing way back when I was 14, nights and weekends, digging ditches in crawl spaces, doing plumbing. This was back circa 2000 and let's see, what did this have been? 2006, I guess. And maybe even earlier than that, maybe 2005. So started out doing that in this area, and we went through kind of the 08, 09 crash, and there was some, a lot of builders kind of went out of business during that time, and but we kind of stayed with it. So I started over in plumbing, I switched over to electrical, kind of just scraping by, working for some of the builders that did make it, and then transitioned. Excuse me. We transitioned to electrical, went up to the nuclear plant, did that for a few years. Always kind of stayed I liked the higher price point stuff. I liked working with the clients that we could do the fun things with, and not just the budget stuff. Yeah. We always did a really, really good job with what we did and the quality. And so for me, it was always about quality. And the only people that could really pay for the quality were the higher price point people, So anyways, long story short, get back in 2015, we buy our first flip. And that's when we start our flipping career. So up to that time,
we is
my wife and I.
You and your wife.
Sorry, yeah. So my wife and I had been kind of on this mission to eventually start our own business, start flipping houses, get financial independence. And that was how we started. We bought our first house in 2010. We lived in it we basically went camping in that house for a long time because we bought it for super, super cheap. And that's a whole nother story in and of itself. And then, we started flipping houses, and we always kind of took that quality with us, that commitment to quality. And so anytime that we did something, we always over improved it, to the detriment of probably my wallet. We never had the numbers. We never could do things quite as cheap as anybody else could, because we were just so committed to making sure that it was done right, where other people might just put lipstick on it and then call it a day. Yeah. I knew what the right way to do it was. And so we kind of always found ourselves up in these higher price points, growing and growing in these price points, because that was the only way that we could justify it. Because you can't do that on a $150,000 house, right. So that's kind of where we started growing in the price point. And then that's kind of where it led into sort of building new houses in downtown Southern Pines, and then kind of grew from there. And then in the last, I guess it was about 2.5, 3 years ago, maybe, we decided to make the switch exclusively into new construction. And so about 2 years ago, we finished our last flip that was on the books, and been exclusively new construction since then. And the price points they've just kind of gone up from there. We found that the people that are coming to this area that like our product, they tend to have the cash. They're selling a house in California or selling a house in New York. They're coming down here. They want what they want. And something that we've always kind of specialized in was really, really good designs and the quality. So the quality is one thing, but then we also have had an in-house designer that's always made our houses unique. Mm-hmm. So they're not just, hey, put the plain Jane vanilla, finishes in here. We've always kind of took the approach of, no, we're going to make it like a custom. And if people don't like it, that's fine. But the people who do like it are really going to like it, mm-hmm. like a magnet. The stronger the magnet, the harder it pushes people away and the more it attracts the right people. Right. So that's kind of always the approach that we've taken. And that's where we're ended up where we are.
Did you ever, so I was telling you before, like I got a construction background, and I've done the same stuff tried to do the same stuff as you. Let me put it that way. But did you ever find a challenge of buying a cheaper home in a cheaper neighborhood, upfitting it the way you wanted it, and then almost making it too nice to sell at the price point that you needed
for the neighborhood? Like on those flipping shows where they like show it and they spent like $1 million, and the one next to it's like
falling apart.
Yeah.
Yes, we've done that a number of times. So thankfully, we've only had 2 projects where we've come really close to breaking even. And if you count all my hours in it, then yes, it was technically a loss. Right. But we've done that a number of times where we'll buy a house and think, yeah, we're gonna improve it, and then surprises happen and more surprises happen, and then we just, since we already went this far, let's go ahead and let's just redo that as well, and do all the trim and do all the it's just scope creep. It grows. And so but yeah, there's a certain point in the neighborhoods whenever there's like a ceiling, like you're not going to go above that, whether you have a 2,000 square foot house or a 3,000 or 5,000 square foot house, you're not going to get more than X in that neighborhood. And so, that's the tricky, that's that tricky balance to, to do.
What was,
excuse me,
like one of the cans of worms you opened before that made you want to throw in the towel on flipping, that you were like, why are we doing this?
Oh man. So we had one just a few streets down on Indiana, and we went into that one, and it was a real kind of a sad situation. The seller had some personal problems. She had some financial issues. She also had some different issues that she was dealing with. And so we were kind of helping her transition into the next phase of her life to get the help that she needed and all this kind of stuff. But the house was very, very old, not taken care of. It was an old house. We'd done a lot of old houses, and I think this one was 1920, 1923 or something like that. So again, not as old as we've done, but in the grand scheme of things, pretty old. Well, the house was built in two parts. You had the main parts, and then you had like what we call like the butler's quarters or whatever. It's like real low ceilings, kind of like this extra like chunk of the house. It was basically not quite half the house, but anyways, we were going to pop the top on it and raise the ceilings and make it nice. Well, as we started digging in, we found out that there was some stuff that we couldn't see, and basically the whole bottom board, essentially, it's called the sill plate, was completely rotten, just gone all the way down. And so then once we started digging into that, we found some more uncovered damage, and it's not something that you can just kind of replace some boards and fix it. So we wound up having to tear down half the house all the way down to the foundation and rebuild from that foundation up. So it was very unexpected. I think it cost us like an extra, I don't know, $80,000 over what we were planning on. So we technically made a little bit of money on that house. If I would have held on to that house now
I was gonna
for a few years, we would have actually made some money. But
yeah.
yeah, it's a great house. I drive by it every day and I still love it. It's still a beautiful house. And I'm glad the home, that's what we do for them though. And so that was a tough one. That was a very, very, very long project. Timelines were completely shot, scopes completely blown out of the water. But it was it was still fun.
Mm-hmm.
I actually like Phil. I really do enjoy flipping. So we don't do it anymore at all. But it was a very, very fun thing. I love taking old things and seeing the potential of what it could be. And so, but it's just hard to scale. It's a harder business to systemize, and that's what we're doing right now. Is we're systemizing the new construction so that we can grow it and scale it.
Do you find a challenge with the older homes? So, again, I did this back when I was like 16 to like 20 years old. Worked for my uncle out of Charlotte.
Yeah,
and we worked on a lot of older homes. We did a combination of like new builds all the way up to like remodeling like an older home. And like in the 1920s, there was a Dilworth neighborhood in Charlotte. It's a very affluent neighborhood now. And we went in and like, hey, we want to redo our bathroom. And the construction, 1920s to 2020s, night and day.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was just, hey, we're going to open up this wall and it's nothing but plaster. And then like one by ones, like all the way across the board, like through the entire wall. And then like your 2x4s are legit 2 inches by 4 inches. And then the crown molding, it was just so intricate. Like they don't make it like that anymore.
Right.
So did you find a challenge, and do you enjoy that challenge of trying to match that style? Because I've tried to do it nowadays. And I'm just like, and I've reached the max of my potential, so I'll just hire somebody else.
Yeah. So, like I said, the old houses were really challenging because you try to stay true to the original intent and those kinds of things. But we never really messed with historic, like quote unquote historic homes, right? So if you start getting into actual,
So you can't help us with this building.
no, I'm sorry. So no, historic homes are a totally different, like with old homes. Yeah, you would find a lot of that. Hey, this was built really, really well. But surprising, I mean, believe it or not, there were still people that were, kind of jacklegs, what we call like they did bad work back then too. We found plenty of that as well. So even though you'd think like, oh, they don't build them like they used to, and it's like, well, yeah, for the most part, but we've seen some stuff where like I know this wasn't kosher even back then. This wasn't good. Like this is not the right way to do things. And it really depends. It's interesting too in the neighborhoods. Like there are certain pockets of neighborhoods. So like in the downtown Southern Pines area, you'll find some really old houses that were built really, really well. And then something from the same year in a different part of town, it might be, again, it's like, hey, there's no value here. Like you cannot repair this at all. So it's only really worth the land, and it's built in the same kind of time frame. But, so it is always fun. It does come with definitely, unique challenges because, the construction methodologies of today with airflow and water management and moisture control and all those types of things, like the reason that those things lasted was because they were so leaky, right? But we don't want our houses leaky anymore. So you're trying to marry that, right? Like how do you make sure that we're controlling the air quality in the house? And so it's, for us, we, excuse me, always tried to put in those old elements as much as we could, but a lot of the times we would just kind of modernize it and give it, newer, fresher trim, those types of things. Gotcha. Because trying to get into some of the real old stuff, now you're getting into custom milling because they don't make those anymore, right. Like that kind of stuff. Man, that was just, we kind of tried to stay away from that as much as we could with the historic homes anyways. As much as it would be really fun, it's very, very difficult to make any money doing that.
So in building and in your kind of realm of expertise, what's your favorite part of running your business? Like, is it the designing process? Is it coming up with new ideas, or is it executing it, or like just seeing the finished product?
Yeah. Okay. So for me, I always wanted to run a business. So when my wife and I were talking before we were married, and this is during our teen years when we were dating, I always wanted to run a business. Her family came from all builders, HVAC guys, electricians, plumbers, contractors, home inspectors, everybody was run their own business all the way through. And she could not stand it. She said, I do not want to run my own business. She said, and I said, well, I really do. I really do want to run my own business. I think that'd be really fun. And she said, okay, fine. If you want to run your own business, we can run a business. You can have a business, but like, don't put me in the books. I'm like, well, we started a business. And I'm like, well, you really don't want me in the books. So guess it's on you now. So that's kind of where she ended up. The thing for me that I really enjoy the most, I'm just a very creative person. So I always enjoyed the design when we were going into a house, and I could I'm a visionary, so I could see the potential for it. And now with the new construction, I can see a lot, and I'm just excited about, I can see the people as they're pulling in and it's late at night and they're carrying their kids in. I could just like imagine they just came home from this vacation and they're just home, that feeling of like, it's like fine, so good to be home. Right. And so I've always had these kind of, I could just see this. I always enjoyed that part of it. So I'm very creative. So I do enjoy the design process. It's a ton of fun for me. But really what I enjoy the most is just the actual running of the business, the idea of growing it, the idea of building the team and saying, okay, there's a problem here in the business. I don't know how to solve it. Like who can help me solve this? And then going out and figuring out who the person is that's going to come into the business and building the structure of the team. So just in the same way that I kind of would design in my head how this house was going to be, I've kind of got the same ideas for what this business could be and the needs that the business itself is going to fulfill, and selling houses or building houses is just kind of the widget that we're doing right now. But I can kind of still see that. So that part's probably the most fun for me, but the technical in the business part that I'm still the most involved with is probably the floor plan design. We do have an in-house drafter, so we do all of our own in-house designs, but I'm still pretty involved with that because I'm creative, and so I kind of insert myself there whenever I need some creative outlets,
Right. When I met you, it was at Ignite the Marketplace, and I was talking about like company values. And so when you're building a team and you're creating this group of people that you want to lead according to the same way you believe and lead, like talk a little bit about some of the challenges of that. And so we had a brief conversation about that afterwards.
Yeah, it's so when we hire people, we're unashamedly who we are, right? Like we're not afraid of that, and I don't mind telling people that. I also let them know, hey, we don't hire exclusively Christians. We hire people from all faiths. It's not a problem for us, but you have to respect our values, and this is how we run our company. So if you have a problem with us praying before meals, or if you have a problem with us praying before big meetings, or like, this is who we are. This is a very, very integral part of who we are. It's probably best for you, and you're like where you are, if you don't come on board, if it's going to offend you, because this is just who we are. And so that's kind of how we start the conversation, and people are usually like, okay, well, this is interesting and different. Whatever.
Did you initially start it that way, or did you evolve to doing that later?
We evolved to doing that later. It never was like a secret necessarily, but as we kind of started growing more, we started realizing the need for like, hey, I'm a nonconformist by heart. So like, I tend to not follow rules, and I don't like political correctness or any of those kinds of things. Right. So, I want to do things my way. And so it's like, hey, I'm going to, and so, I'm not going to tiptoe around and try to walk on eggshells to not offend people. It's not don't get me wrong. It's not my intention to offend anybody, but I am who I am. I believe what I believe. And, I would love for you to believe that, because I think it's amazing relationship with Jesus. Right. But like, I'm not going to try to force you to that. And anyway, so trying to lead a company now that has a mixture of faiths and lead it by those same principles has been interesting. We reiterate consistently what our core purpose is, and our core purpose is to glorify God by improving the lives of everyone that we serve. Like regardless of what we're selling, that is our core purpose. And so everybody knows that. And so we filter when we were having conversations in our meetings, we have to filter through that question. Hey, well, does this way bring glory to God? Are we improving the lives of the people that we serve, and are we glorifying God through this process? And to hear some of my atheist or my agnostic or some of my very spiritual, not Christian at all people asking, well, hey guys, does this bring glory to God? Are we improving the lives of everyone that we serve? Is this a glorifying decision or whatever? And I'm like, okay. I'm like, all right, I hear you. So, we just try to reiterate it a lot and say, this is who we are. And it kind of just permeates. Now, some of the things are challenging because, you go back to the moral code of what is right and wrong and what is the basis for our morality. Obviously us coming from the Bible, it's pretty cut and dry. But when you don't believe that, then what is right and wrong? Is there even right and wrong? You start getting into those kinds of philosophical questions of, well, what decision would they make if they don't have that same foundation? And so, as much as we can, we do try to hire people that are of the same faith. But again, if you're great at what you do and we feel like you've got our shared core values, you don't have to be. But it does help whenever I can have, like my executive assistant or, somebody in my office coordinator or those kinds of things. And they understand, exactly where we're coming from and we can kind of have those deeper conversations as well. It definitely helps.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I definitely think too that, like any company, every company has a core list of like, these are our values. This is what we believe in, whether that's Google or Amazon or,
right.
Your business or, something, the ice cream parlor right up the
Right.
street. They have their values and what
Yeah.
they believe in. And a lot of times nobody questions it. It's like, our values are hard work. We're going to treat the customer the best way and this, that, and the other. And it's like, yeah, I can buy into that. But as soon as you say, we follow the Bible and its core principles, it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
That's when it becomes an issue. But yeah, everybody has their,
Yeah.
and you want your employees to share your values because it's your business.
Right.
And it's like this, I want this business to represent who I am. And Jeff Bezos is, I would imagine, is still running Amazon the way he wants Amazon to be ran.
Yeah.
And you either buy in or.
And every company, every team has a set of core values, whether they're spoken or written down or identified or not. They're there.
They're lived out.
They are lived out, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. People, it's like, it's not, and for us, we never tried to make it like, oh, well, everybody's got to have core values. Like, let's figure out what our core values are. It was a really kind of a long process of figuring out what really, who are we? What do we believe? Like, what is important to us? If we had people that exemplified X values, these particular things, then we would feel like, yes, we are winning as a team and as a company. That it was kind of a long journey of figuring out what they were. And they've slowly evolved and tweaked, and we've cut some off and we've reworked some and those types of things over the years. But yeah, everybody has values. They're just not necessarily spoken.
Right.
Yeah. And we learned that, unfortunately, the hard way in going through the valleys of everything that happens by bringing in people that doesn't align. I think a lot of times, a lot of businesses will have like the overarching thing. And like you're saying, they just don't have it spoken. And I think that's where the biggest difference we made in our business is it is spoken. So even if maybe someone's not a believer that works for me, the breakdown of the values as compassion is one of our values. You don't have to be
Right.
a believer to have compassion. So it helps us have like other words and terms to filter through so that we can refer to those when we're handling
That's why I don't technically work for her, because my compassion level is like really
I
low.
understand.
Yeah. His name is on all the bills, but that's about it.
Yeah.
And he fixes stuff around here. So
Try. And so I'm
But-
like, this was built in 1920. I can't match this molding. I give up.
Yeah.
Just throw some caulk on it and call it a day.
yeah.
Little caulk, a little paint.
Yep.
He's a carpenter. What he ain't.
Yeah. Speaking of, let's look at that on the way out. But yeah, I think that's what helps when you are a believer leading an organization with multiple faiths within it, which I think is a wonderful thing to do because that having those defined words and values that you put out to your customers, to your staff, because then you're not filtering it just even through the overarching thing. Like I said, you can target it for those individual things. And I finally sat down and practiced what I preached this year by doing that. And it's just, it's hurt. It's been hard, but it's definitely been worth it. And
For sure.
see the fruits of that.
Do you have any tools that you use to measure people based on your core values? Have you incorporated anything to say like, hey, this person is a core values fit? They're above the bar or below the bar? Because we've done that in our company, and it's been eye-opening, or it's been, revealing of like, hey, this person may have these core values, but if we actually we have this objective I say objective, it's pretty subjective, but it's this little scorecard that we use, and we have the bar, and you have to be above the bar in order to be on the bus, and realizing hey, this person is good on this one and they're good on this one, and they're so on this one, and this one is they are definitely not a core values fit here. We've got to talk to them about either getting above the bar or getting off the bus. And that's hard when you have high performers. Have you guys, have you gotten there yet?
I think for us, it was, you're not stealing from us. Congratulations, you're on the team.
Yes. Yeah. Here's a mirror. Breathe into it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's hard is high performers. That sometimes overshadows a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where people make the mistake of promoting people and putting them in the wrong positions. That can be a detriment to their business, even though their technical job, they did a great thing, but of relaying your values, that doesn't always work out. We don't necessarily have a measurement thing in place of your compassion on a scale of 1 to 5, you're -2. For us, we don't have that. But if there's anything that we are making a decision on, so if I'm saying, yes, we are going to, do this fundraiser, we look at it and how does it fit into that? What are we relaying through that? Or if somebody's not doing something they're supposed to, we're like, how is this lacking in our core values? How can we relate it back to that? Of
Right.
well, when you made that decision to tell that person that, it did not show the compassion, or it did not show, that we're collaborative or whatever it may be.
Right.
So I think that's where it's helpful, because then in counseling people, when you're like, this just really irks me, and you can't say why, that helps you have that reference like you're talking about. But yeah, I feel like I need a little golf scorecard for the little values and rate everybody.
It does. So we use an operating system called EOS. It's called the Entrepreneur Operating System. And it's got a tool in there. It's called the People Analyzer. And it goes through a couple of different, it goes through the core values. They've got a little part for the core values. Are they above the bar? It's either plus, minus, or minus. Are they most of the time exemplifying it? Sometimes maybe, sometimes not, and most of the time not. And that's pretty much it. And you figure out what your bar is. So yeah, it is a very simple golf scorecard type thing, and it's but it actually helps. And so we kind of got away from that a little bit, because we had some really high some high performing and also high salaried people on our team that we spent a lot of time investing in, and it was kind of always there under the surface. So I'm like, I don't know about this. Something's not quite right there with the core, just something just seems off. And to me, it was fine. I mean, when they would face me, and my interactions with them were always okay. But what I would hear from the team and different things, I'm like, that doesn't seem okay. And so as I started kind of pulling that thread, it just kept pulling and pulling and pulling. And so, so in July, we wound up letting my COO and my director of construction, who were a husband and wife team, we ended up letting them go. Again, ultimately, there was performance issues as well. We weren't hitting metrics and those types of things. But at the end of the day, it was really because of core values misalignment. And again, we kind of got away from it. It was easy just to be like, no, I think they're probably okay. I'm just going to put my blinders on and be like, well, we're putting a lot of money on these people. And it's
hard, because you know how much more work you're going to have to do.
Yeah.
So it's like, is it better to tolerate this, or do I have to step in and do all of this that I have finally offloaded?
Yep. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, we let them go July 5th. And that next Monday, we had somebody flying in from across the country to start, and I was like, hey, I know that you were talking with this person last week prior to coming on board, and they were going to be your boss, but they're not here anymore. And he was like, what? And so I'm like, yeah, and also this person's gone too. Okay, so it's gonna
So
be
let's get
it's
started.
gonna be a crazy week, and it was just let's get jobs unstuck, let's figure out where we're at. Like their team was very very unhealthy. I had people telling me they're gonna quit, and it was just chaos. And for basically all of Q3 of last year was just trying to stay alive with the team, build that trust back with the team, get it out of where we were. And then it was a ton of work. I mean, you talk about it's that's probably big part of the reason too. You're like, oh man, I really hope this works out because this is going to be really, really painful on me, if not. And but it's seasonal. It's not forever. You can't do that forever. But yeah, there are definitely those seasons that you have to jump in and do that.
Yeah.
Have you found that, when you are trying, like when you get away from your values and not necessarily getting away from them, but you're putting those blinders on and it's like, nope, we just got to get through this and I'm just not going to look or listen and just because we're doing okay. But when you finally make that decision to be like, no, we got to get back to our values. And so therefore I'm going to make the hard right over the easy wrong. Do you find that God kind of brings the right people in your life to fill that gap? Or do you?
Yeah, I mean, so for us, it was, so going back to kind of my executive assistant that we just hired in December, she was the COO actually for another company. And she is a very good core values fit. Obviously, she's a believer. Very, very nice to have that, on the team. It took a little bit of time for me and Liz. Like we were kind of in the valley, if you will, I guess, like of the business. I mean, we were just kind of in the thick of it for a while and just kind of trusting. But we didn't know. I mean, we were behind on our financials so bad. We were behind on projects. They're stuck and those kinds of things. And so, we're just trying to have faith. And Liz kind of tends to struggle a little bit more with the anxiety than I do. I'm like, hey, it's all monopoly money. They're printing more every day, kind of thing. And that's my approach.
Yeah.
So, but it was really tough. And so I think during that season, just learning to really trust and say, God, like you're going to have to, like, if you want the business open, I can't shut the doors. And if you want this business shut, there's nothing I can do to keep these doors open. So like, I'm just gonna have to trust you that you're going to bring the right people. You're going to have to bring the buyers. You're going to have to help us get these projects going. And so, that's, there was a season where we were like that by ourselves, but as we started kind of wrestling through everything and coming out of it, like he has brought us people that were good. And so I've got a really amazing, person right now. I say it's executive assistant. She's really, like I said, she was a COO of another company. That's not the position that we hired her for here. And we told her that we're like, hey, we really don't have a COO position for you right now. Like Liz is it. I'm the CEO, Liz is the COO right now. And like for the health of the team, this is all we were doing for a long time. And she's like, that's fine. I just really like your company. I really want to help. I really want to be involved. And so, she's helping us revamp all of our processes. She's helping us stay organized with meetings. I'm not a very organized or process driven person. Naturally, again, pretty rebellious when it comes to like, don't put me in a box kind of. But I recognize how important it is. And she's kind of helping bring structure to mine and Liz's life, so that we can actually do the things that we say we want to do. And so.
Husband and wife team.
Yep.
How do you address conflict within the business?
We wrestle it out. No, I don't know. We've always been able to pretty well separate business and personal. Like it's not personal. We're both pretty logical people. There's not really a ton of, going back to the compassion thing, like I'm pretty like cut and dry when it comes to that kind of stuff, right? And thankfully, Liz is.
We're asking for our own benefit.
Okay. So Liz is.
Just so you know, that's why I'm laughing.
Yeah. Okay. So Liz is as well. It is hard because there's not really a whole lot of. I say there's separation. There's separation like emotionally. Like we don't like. I know most of the time, not all the time. And she knows most of the time it's like, hey, if we say this, it's because this is what's in the best interest of the company. It's not because I don't love you. It's not because I don't think you're an amazing person or any of those kinds of things. It is just strictly like, hey, this has got to be business and this is not personal at all. So, thankfully we've had a really good working relationship. It's definitely come with its struggles whenever I'm strongly opinionated about things. I'm pretty hard negotiator. We just so as an example, we just listed a house for sale. I was out of the office. She decided to come up with the counter offer. They negotiated it and it was accepted. And I looked at it and I was like, we just could have negotiated that a lot differently, I felt like, and we could have done better, right? And so I unlovingly just brought that up, like, yeah, that was not a good decision. And that kind of made her that did not feel very good for her. So so I had to apologize and said, like, hey, like, let's go back to like business. I was wrong personally. I shouldn't have said it the way that I said it. And I'm sorry. So like we talked through that and that was okay. But then we were able to then have a conversation around, okay, roles and responsibilities. Whose seat is whose? Like, where do we sit in our seats? Got it. Okay. So she's like, yeah, no, I get it. That's your seat. You should be the one making that decision. Like at the end of the day, that's a seat in the business that you're sitting in. Like, let's separate out all the emotion out of it. Somebody else jumped in the seat, made a decision, regardless of who it was. It doesn't matter if it was her or if it was somebody else. It would have been like, oof, that's not their role. So again, we talked about it. How did that make me feel? I felt disrespected. I felt unappreciated because I'm just trying to help. And, we kind of were able to talk through that and say, okay, cool. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the business side of it. And like, what are the boxes that I'm sitting in and the roles and those types of things. So thankfully that's kind of how we handle a lot of that stuff.
Are there rules and boundaries? Like you can't talk about business at the dinner table. Like we can only talk about business during these hours, or does it just bleed over all the time?
I wish it were. I wish it were. I know that people have those boundaries and it seems like really great when they do. Liz and I, we really don't. I mean, if the kids, we try not to do it like with the kids, right? Like if we're hanging out with the kids, it's like, hey, well, let's focus on spending the time with them versus just continuing the conversation that we were talking about when we left work, So we try to do that for the kids part of it. But usually once they go to bed or whatever, like we can continue those conversations. And we do actually have a life outside of business. I say that. We do talk about other things and whatnot. So it's not just all business all the time, but it's also not uncommon at all for us to be brushing our teeth and getting ready for bed and just continuing the conversation that we've talked about and getting in bed. And then that's where our pillow talk is still business stuff. Unfortunately it's definitely a very big part of our life.
Our situation is slightly different as I'm not teaching dance or
thank goodness
anything like that. And we started it. It was her idea. And then, I'm along for the ride because I'm her husband, and it's the collective we, but then it's a lot of, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? And I'm like, nope, I wouldn't do it. Cause I'm just very probably need to spend more time thinking than I do talking about what I'm saying.
Yep.
And then so it turns into well, I'm not going to do that. It's like, well, then don't ask me what my opinion is. But but it's a lot of those I'm trying to help her make the best decision.
Yeah.
But I'm not working right alongside of her every single day, managing schedules and dealing with parents and staff and everything else that she has to deal with. And so when she asks me my opinion, I'm very opinionated.
Yeah.
And so that can be a challenge in and of itself because it's she asked me a question yesterday and I was like, don't ask me.
Right.
She's like, but I want to know your opinion. Yeah, but I'm very biased and I don't want to give you my opinion.
Yeah.
And so it's taken me a long time to realize hey, this is your business. And she'd be like, it's our business. I'm like, okay, what's my title? Because all people see is me walk in. And if they see me show up to a meeting, they're like, oh gosh, I'm getting fired.
Yeah.
Because that's the only thing I do around here.
He's really good at doing that without emotion. Me, I'm like, I'm so sorry. It's not personal.
But we have found it to be a challenge to sit at home. And it's we do it together, but I'm separated. I'm not personally invested. I am with her, emotionally invested, but I don't wake up every morning and go, okay, today at Encore, I have to do this.
Right.
And so
I think that's good though. I mean, so we have people that we talk to in the multitude of counsel, right? There's wisdom and safety and that kind of thing. So for us, we've got people that we rely on that are outside of the business. Both of us are just very much inside of the business. So we rely on those people outside to kind of give us the like that outside counsel, that outside point of view again, because and also me and my wife are very different. Like going back to like the talking more less, right? I talk to think. I'm a talk to thinker. And so a lot of times I'll just go and go and go and go. And she is a think to talker. Like she does not talk until she's made up her mind about something. And so what that ended up with, like I would just bully her. I would just run over her in conversations because she would just pipe up with her one little like, hey, I've made a decision. This is what I want to do. And be like, oh, I don't think that's a good idea because blah, 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 blah. And I'd go on for 20 minutes and she's like, okay, well, he seems very opinionated about it. So I say, well, I don't really care. I just, just talking it out. She's like, well, I mean, you've talked about it for 20 minutes, so it seems like you've got an opinion about it. Like, I mean, I'm just thinking, I'm just thinking out loud or whatever. So we've kind of relied on those outside people to give us that feedback of like, hey, what am I not seeing? And she can say, what is she not seeing? Because I'm default go. She's definitely default no, like very risk averse. And again, I kind of go back to that, like, hey, what's the worst that could happen? We lose it all and end up in a cardboard box, and then we have to rebuild it. Like, so what? Like, that's not a big deal, is it? And she's like, yeah, I kind of like, yeah, I really don't want to do that. So, we definitely rely on outside counsel.
You mentioned that you're part of a lot of other Christian networks and business owners and things like that, and that kind of inspired you to kind of redirect your business and also have the global missions. Who were like the main influencers of that, how those conversations come about, and how do you start building houses or helping build houses in foreign countries?
Yeah. So I have a buddy of mine who is running an investment fund right now. And we started flipping houses around the same time. He was a little bit before me. And we had kind of met through a not religious at all, but like through a mastermind group called 7-Figure Flipping. Phenomenal group. If anybody's interested in investing in real estate, learning the ins and outs of flipping, those kinds, I still highly recommend people go to that. There's a ton of very faith-based people in there. It is not exclusively faith-based. Excuse me. He had what he called investing with purpose. And I was like, okay, investing with purpose. Yeah. So he started doing more apartment complexes and large multifamily deals, self-storage deals, retirement communities, those types of things. And his whole thing, again, was investing with purpose. And so what he would do is he would write people into these business deals that were missionaries or these nonprofits or these churches. And he would take huge chunks of the profits from these big profit deals. He would just write them in as a general partner in the deal. And so these missionaries didn't need to go out and raise funds because they were just getting monthly checks from the rents, those on these 200 unit apartment complexes. And I was like, wow, that's really, really cool. So, he was doing that. And then I'd met who's now a friend, Brian, here locally. And you've probably met him at Ignite the Marketplace multiple times. And he was running C12, and he started talking to me about it. And he said, hey, you're a business owner, and what are you doing for the ministry? And I was like, nothing really. Like, I don't know. We make money and we tithe and we give to church. He's like, yeah, but like, what's your business doing? And so, I always kind of had the ideas to, like, we want to use our business for more. Like, I want to make a lot of money, not just so that I could go out and drive a Porsche, which I'm not opposed to if I ever get one or whatever. Great. But like, I would love to, I always have this dream of, God forbid somebody on my team, gets sick or somebody in their family gets sick. I'm like, I want to be in the position where we can say, don't worry about your job. Like, you're going to get paid. Like, you go take care of your family, right? It's the only way that I can have that kind of an impact is if we're doing really, really well in business. And so anyways, I met Brian and started kind of meeting these different people who were using their business as what they call like BAAM, business as a ministry. And he was asking me about it. And so I joined this group called C12, where there's other Christian executives and entrepreneurs who are trying to use their business to advance the kingdom. And so that was a big, kind of a big turning point, I guess, for us. And it's like, hey, this is interesting, like how people are actually, like, they're measuring, hey, what's your kingdom impact? What are you what are you doing in your business? And that kind of set us on this journey of figuring out, like, hey, what can we do? Like, what is our business impact and those types of things. And so, we're definitely not where I want to be. Like I want to be doing a lot more. But we got a corporate chaplain who came to our office, and I was like, I don't know that anybody's going to use this guy at all. Like it's kind of weird. I'd never really heard of that before. Like, chaplain in the military. But he sends us like an anonymous report every month for like, hey, who's called or how many calls you've gotten, how many visits he's done, how many hospitals he's visited, whatever. And I'm always surprised. I'm like, wow, people are calling him. People are actually utilizing him. And so I'm like, they wouldn't necessarily talk to me like that. Like, even though I'm a Christian or whatever, like I'm not going in there and trying to ask them how they're doing and say like, hey, do you want to do a counseling session with you and your husband? Because you're doing that's not something you do with your boss, right? So it's reasonable that nobody would ever talk to me about those types of things. And so he's kind of the outlet there. And so
I want to pause you on that. So a corporate chaplain, essentially you're paying him for his services for your staff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And it's surprisingly cost effective. I mean, it is really like I was thinking it was going to be like another salaried payer. I'm like, I can't do that. I got prices we use Corporate Chaplains of America. And because we're a part of C12, we wound up getting a really good discount. It's like surprisingly affordable. And so I'm like, you know what? This is totally worth it I think it's like $3,600 a year. He stops by once a week. He'll do funerals, he'll do on call. He's anytime 24/7. It's like available. So anyways, it's really it's been a pretty cool resource for us. And then we kind of got into this idea of like, what can we do? I was like, man, it'd be super cool if we could give away a house, right? If we do like the Toms buy one, give one with the shoes types of thing, But again, if you're thinking about here and what you can do here in the United States, you're like, you could build 100 houses and give one away maybe, but like the houses are just way too expensive to do anything like that. But, there's such a massive, massive need globally. And I'm also on the board of this nonprofit called the Seven Figure Foundation. And we've partnered with people that have ministries, and then they build houses as a part of their ministry. So like they are ministering to the local community and they build houses. And so I was like, well, we could just do that. Like, let's just do a buy one, give one with those houses because they're, way more cost effective. And I say houses, I'm going to use like air quotes here because they're 11 by 22 structures that most people would consider like a shed in the backyard. But to these people, when you look at where they're coming from, when you have conversations with them, like this is safety, this is security, this is dry sleeping, this is like home. And these people are just so incredibly grateful just to have this start in life, something that would have taken them 10, 15 years to save up enough money just to buy the materials for. And they never would because they just don't, you just can't do that. The people don't get ahead like that. And so, we started doing that. We have ministry partners now that we're doing our buy one, give one through. And, it's been a huge, huge blessing. So like our team has actually gone down for a few of the builds and gone hands-on, met the families that were getting the house. And it's been, just an unbelievable blessing, and it kind of all comes full circle. Cause like, so so we were kind of joking about my name earlier, Druther. It's like Drutard or something like that is whenever it came over on the boat. I don't know. It's like Slovak or something. I'm a mutt. Like I'm got Japanese, Swedish, like all different kinds of things. But like primarily, like my grandfather was from Mexico and he's from Mexico City. And so, and his dad, so my great grandfather, was actually kicked out of his house when he was 8. So his mom was living with these people. She was nannying, taking care of their house for him. She got pregnant, and they said, "Hey, you can only have one kid in the house." So 8 years old, he was in the streets of Mexico City on his own.
Oh my gosh.
Shining shoes, newspaper in his clothes to stay warm at night. Like it was really kind of a crazy life, right? And so never, obviously 8 years old was as much education as he got. Always was reading books and always doing these things, and trying to develop himself. Was able to send his sons over to the United States, built a better life for them. My grandfather, albeit not perfect, built a great life for my mom, and my mom was able to build that life for me. And so now we're kind of coming back full circle where we're saying, hey, like, let's build these people houses so that they don't have to experience that same thing. Because my grandfather is like the extreme exception to the rule, right? Like if that happens now, like those kids just get picked up by the cartels. Those kids go right into the gang culture and those types of things, and it's just really kind of perpetuating this problem that it's just incredibly sad, right? So we're able to have just like a little piece of that of like, hey, they don't have to get kicked out of their home. They're not having to go out on the streets to figure out how to, do illegal things to make money and get by, So it's kind of been a really cool blessing to kind of come full circle.
When you see the impact that's making on your staff and business here, because we talk about, like blessings come tenfold back to you. How do you see that? How does your staff see it and respond to it, and talk about some of those conversations and things?
Yeah, it is really cool because we do get we get pictures of the families, and that's a big part of what we're doing is like we're when we are having hard conversations or we're talking about things in the office, we kind of like pause and say, this is why we're doing this, guys, right? Like there are people that are going to be getting homes that don't have homes right now, that are struggling to just make it. And so, that's been, it's been really cool to see my team kind of get excited about that and talk about that and really, like own it, like take it as their own, and it's not just me kind of shoving it down their throats, but like that's coming up in their conversations around like, we got families that are going to be getting houses. This is why we're doing this. They're printing out pictures and putting them on the walls and saying like, this is what we want to do for like, look at this new family. People, we go under contract for a house and we're like, yes, we get to send a check to our partner. So we like somebody's getting a house, like as soon as we go under contract and people are excited for it. It has been a huge blessing. And I'm just excited to do a lot. I'm excited to do a lot more because with some of these houses, like, again, getting up into these higher price points, it's like, man, we could give like 2 or 3 houses away. Like with some of these deals, we're like, this is going to be like multiplied, not even like a 1-for-1. 1-for-1 is like, okay, that might be easy on some of these houses. Let's do 2 or 3 or 4-for-1. Like, let's go. So that's exciting.
Where all do you build the houses again?
So primarily Mexico, but we've also got houses that have gone up in Costa Rica, El Salvador. My ministry partners also have like Honduras and like a few other places that they've got arms and branches in or whatever, but we haven't built any there. So like I said, most of ours have been in Mexico and then like one in El Salvador, one in Costa Rica.
And how much is it approximately to build a house?
It depends on between 6,000 and 12,000 is about the price of a house. It just depends on so we've got multiple ministry partners. They'd finish it out to different levels. Some of them include furniture. We'll go out and buy toys for the kids, that kind of thing. Gotcha. And some will do like what we call a double wide. So it's like 22 by 22 because it's 2 11 by 22s, put together. And those are for like the bigger families with like 4 or 5 kids, which is kind of crazy to think about. But but between like 6,000 and 12,000.
How did you get introduced to the right people to help you fulfill this goal of yours? So that way you're not just sending $12,000 down to Mexico and it's like
the cartel
any day now.
Right. Yeah. So going back to kind of the board, I'm on the board of the 7-Figure Foundation, right? Which it kind of grew out of that 7-figure flipping mastermind I was talking about earlier.
Okay.
Right. So a bunch of us in that mastermind, I say a bunch of us, like, there was a handful of people that started it and they said, hey, we want to start a foundation. Like we want to start a do-good arm of this mastermind. And so they asked me, and so I was one of the founding board members on it and had some like incredible people on the board with me. And one of them was, I don't know, I feel bad saying it, but I think he's in his 70s. The guy's like 5th gear all the time, go, 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 go. And he's like really experienced like with ministries as well. And so you talk to him about anything. He's like, oh yeah, well back in like 1970 something, I was over in India doing this. And you're like, this guy's like just been going and giving his entire life. He's been doing this kind of stuff. And so he was a super invaluable resource, and he had these partners that he's worked with in the past. And so that's how we kind of got introduced to it. And then we went down and did a build with them. Then I did another build with them. And I was like, okay, I see how they operate. I like these guys. I understand their mission. Like they're not a house building ministry, or how do they say it? They say we're not a house building ministry. We're a ministry that builds houses. It's like our goal is not to just build houses for people. our goal is to reach people with the gospel and support them and love them and build a community where they can, get involved in their local church and come to know Jesus. And we build houses. So that, that's our kind of like in to the community. And so they've got pastors that they work with. They've got like local boards of pastors set up that will say like, hey, this family is really deserving. Again, they don't have to be Christians to receive the house. They don't have to go to church. There's nothing, no strings attached like that. But it's just, these people are really need a house. They really need help. They really need the love of Jesus in their life right now through the hands and feet of the local church. So that's what we're aiming to do, is just be like, let them be the local hands and feet of Jesus, and then draw them to the church and draw them to Jesus.
When you do that kind of stuff locally, I know you were helping in Western North Carolina.
Yep.
What does that look like locally? Since it's in some ways it's easier, in some ways it's more complex, because if you gift somebody something, then they have to pay taxes on it. But if you give them the money to pay the taxes, they have to pay taxes on the money you gave them to pay the taxes and all of those things. So like, how do you kind of change that when you're helping people locally?
Yeah, so the local stuff, honestly, it hasn't been as much as the stuff overseas, but we have done stuff in the Western North Carolina, and that's kind of slowed down over the last couple of months for me personally. I'm getting back in touch and trying to figure out how we can kind of ramp those efforts back up here now as we start coming into the spring, again, with giving the time and resources of my team, because we've got framers, plumbers, electricians. I mean, we've got people to help rebuild some of this stuff. So most of the stuff that we've done, though, honestly, locally, has just been like collecting donations and dropping it off and helping, pass it out with people and building the sheds and giving it to people. As far as tax implications or any of that kind of stuff goes, I have no idea.
Yeah.
We've just kind of, we saw a need. We started loading up trucks and just, hey, you've got stuff. They need stuff. Like, let's go. That's all we've really done. So it hasn't been super well thought out. And maybe one day that will come back to bite me and something we need to figure out. I don't know, but
It's a write-off.
It is
something.
a write-off.
Yeah. We're
Now-
using it with company trucks and company gas. So it's like,
Well, I know that there are groups like building tiny houses and stuff like
Yeah.
that to go over there, and I didn't
Yeah.
know if you guys were involved in
We
that or
were,
helping
yeah.
with supplies or.
we have, and it was kind of it was actually pretty frustrating. We were involved with the Raise the Roof event and helping to build the tiny homes up in Carthage and donating supplies and those kinds of things to get out there. And, I was on the board, I was on the phone call with some of the municipalities, and they had, environmental health, and they had inspections, and the fire chief, and basically saying like, these are not homes. They don't have a CO. If we see people living in these, then we're going to have to condemn them and remove them from the property. So you're going to cause more pain for these people. And there, this some people were asking, it's like, well, where are they going to go to the bathroom in these houses? Like, you can't just give these people the houses. I'm like, well, they're in a tent right now. They're about to freeze to death. They're going in the woods. It's like, maybe we can give them an insulated box that they can throw like a heater. I don't know. Like, is that really that bad? And they're like, yeah, this is bad. Like, you can't do this. It just kind of goes back to the government just getting in the way of everything. So thankfully they've passed some emergency relief. North Carolina, passed some like emergency relief where they're more relaxed on those types of things so that people could just get out of the freezing cold. But yeah, it was kind of mind blowing having these conversations. I'm like, you're really telling me that it's better off for these people to be in a tent than in this box with insulation because
Wow.
of what exactly? And they're like, well, it's not permitted. We don't know. And I'm like, oh my goodness, So, anyways, we just kind of did it. Anyways,
What if
we're just going.
collapses in the middle of the night and somebody gets hurt?
yeah,
Who do we
right.
sue?
Right.
No,
It's like, yeah, it's kind of mind blowing. So, we had a little bit of that to deal with, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of need up there, and when you get it up to you get the stuff up there, and it ends up in the right hands, and people, we had one guy telling us who was he was up there, he's up there building out those tiny homes right now. And he kind of came down to the Raise the Roof event, and we were chatting, and he said, man, I got a full grown man crying in my arms. Just, he had a beautiful house. It was completely destroyed. And we dropped this off, and he's just bawling, crying because of this tiny little shed, this tiny little 10 by 20, 18 shed that got put on his property, just crying his eyes out because they lost everything. And so now he's like, okay, my kids are going to at least be like warm for like the next little bit.
Right.
And so it's just like, it has an impact for sure.
It's sad that in our country they make it that difficult for you to help people. Like, shouldn't be that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know there's a lot coming down the pike right now with the recent kind of transition, with Trump. And again, not to get like super political or anything, but I know that he's been meeting with people and talking. So I think there's going to be some, hopefully, red tape lifted and some, maybe some more aid and that kind of stuff. But, it's amazing because, when you think about, for me, again, not to get super political, but I tend to not, really trust on or rely on the government for anything. It's like, it's not their job. It's my job as the church, right? Like me and these other Christians, like it's our job. It's a local, that's how it's been for, thousands of years. Like it's the local community who does this, and especially the local church. And so when it comes to a lot of these types of events, those, like even with North Carolina, it's like, hey, the people that were on the ground was the local community, the local church. That was who was mobilized. And then after a while, you started seeing some of the government people come up, and some of them were doing something, and a lot of them weren't doing much of anything. So, at the end of the day, it was for us, it's like, hey, this is not the government's responsibility to take care of my neighbors. It's mine. And so, is it nice to have the help? Sure. But also, I don't know. It's our job as Christians to kind of step up and do that. And I think a lot of, because the government's been so involved for so long with aid and with helping, that I think a lot of Christians especially are kind of like, well, the government's got it. Like the government sends all this aid, right? So like my brother's a missionary. My brother-in-law is a missionary to Ukraine, and like on the front lines, dropping humanitarian aid off to these churches and dealing with orphans and providing camps for these people. And so he's really involved in his ministry over there. And it's like been so frustrating for him because he's trying to raise funds to get into the hands of the local churches over there. And so many of the churches here are like, well, didn't our government send like $10 billion worth of aid?
Right.
He's like, if we had $10 billion worth of aid, we'd be swimming in it. He's like, it didn't get where you think it got. And he's like, this is not the government's job to support the local church. He's like, we're talking like church to church. He's like, this is the same church. Like we're the same body of Christ, right? It's just in a different part of the world. He's like, but it should be that the church is helping the church, And it's still a lot of Christians, unfortunately, are more politicized, or well, I know we've sent a lot of aid to that country, so I'm not really interested, or that kind of thing. It's like, no, this has nothing to do with what our government is doing. There's the local church needs help. They're orphans.
You put people in the midst of that. So it's like, we're going to send $10 billion or however much it was to this group of people to help. And it's like, and then there's no oversight. So you have no clue where the money goes. And we're not going to turn this into a political podcast or anything. But you're absolutely right. Like, that's the church's responsibility. We should be helping. And a lot of times we just kind of step back and say, well, we've sent so much money, we could be doing other things.
Right.
And, we need a new coffee bar here at church, so we should be investing our money into that.
Right. Yeah.
So
and a lot of people try and turn their eye. Like our daughter lives up in Western North Carolina, and she'll be driving and like have her phone up on the dash, like taking videos of it. And I posted it on our Rooted page, and people, horrible comments. This is fake news. This is lies. This is this. And I'm like, no, my daughter literally took this video yesterday and texted it to me. And like, but I think they just want to act like it's not happening. Like we'll just pretend that none of this is happening, and we'll just turn our eye to it.
Well, it was the same with the, and we're going off on a completely random tangent now, but it's the same thing with the fires out in LA. Like, all this land and people's personal possessions are like burning and just destroyed over a period of like a couple of days. Yeah. And you can argue about like how it started and what the response was. But it's like, then to like see comments online of like people saying like, well, they deserve it.
Yeah.
That's Hollywood. No, they're people. They don't deserve that.
That's like, what people were saying on ours too.
Yeah. Nobody deserves to.
That.
Yeah. It's like, what are you thinking? Like, how can you be that? It's just like a problem in our society where we've just dehumanized people over the internet, I feel like, so that going back to the compassion thing, I know you joked about not having compassion. I'm sure, it sounds like you've got some compassion. It sounds like
maybe a little bit.
But we so easily just like dehumanize people that we don't have any relation to, and it's just yeah, it's over there. It's somewhere off in, newsland or wherever, but it's not real. It's not real until it's here, until you experience it for yourself, And that's the thing. And so, that's why it's so important for us to get people like from our company to these trips, right? Just going back to like the Mexico thing. It's like when people realize and you can see it and touch it and you smell it and you get to experience what they're living in firsthand, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I get it. It's real. Same thing with going out to Western North Carolina. Same thing with going out to the LA fires, right? It's devastating. But to us, it's like, well, I don't know. It's a beautiful day in Pinehurst. Yeah. Like, I don't know. It's not real to me. But when you experience it, all of a sudden when you see it on the news, you're like, okay, those are real people that are really, really hurting over there.
Or when your child is stuck up there and you can't get a hold of them and you don't know if they're okay. And then he drove up there and 10 miles away from it, they turned him around and they're like, nope. And we're like, we need our child.
Right.
Like that
crazy.
that stuff's scary when it hits home. But we won't keep you too much longer. I just have a little bit of personal background questions to ask. So you talked about your grandfather and also that you and your wife met as teenagers and stuff. Did you both grow up in a faith-based home?
Yes.
And tell me about y'all a little bit.
So we did. We both grew up in faith-based homes, very different, I'd say, versions or denominations of Christianity. So Liz was very traditional, more kind of independent, fundamental background. I was more big evangelical, just raised, again, nothing against my parents or her parents or anything. That's just kind of how we were raised. And so we met down here at Calvary. We started dating in the 10th grade and wrestled our own faith out as we kind of through our teen years and into our early 20s. So we got married. I was 19, and we kind of figured out, hey, what do we believe the Bible says? We both had relationships with Jesus, but kind of wrestling through who God was and what our understanding of God was really pretty big. A lot of people's understanding of God is shaped by their parents, and so figuring out who, what does the Bible say that God is, or who does it say that God is, was really kind of a journey for us. And obviously we're still on that journey, still trying to just figure it out, but it's been, it's been a part of us for a long time. Through my teen years, I don't say experimented. I was, try to be very scientific, very skeptical, and said like, hey, like, okay, I understand that this is what I believed all growing up, but why do I believe this? Like, is this just because I was raised in this house? And so I started exploring all the other religions and like learning about them and figuring out like, is this logical for me to even believe this? And, kind of came full circle and said like, yeah, no, I believe that all of the things that the Bible says is there's no way that all these prophecies could have been fulfilled. And like through all the other logical, scientific ways or whatever you can come to it, it's like, man, it's just really hard to refute all of this evidence. Like you just can't do that. And so, that kind of brought me, I say back, and not that I ever left, but, so did that. And then, but yeah, through our early 20s, especially just figuring out who are we. And so, we go to a local church here, Redeemer Church. It's a PCA church. Again, it's more traditional liturgy. It's interesting because it's not, it's not the way that I was raised. It's also not the way that she was raised theologically, but it's been great. It's been really good.
So both of you grew up here.
So I was actually from New Jersey. Don't hold it against me. But I came down here when I was 13.
Okay.
And so she was raised right up the street up in down, like Southern Pines, Weymouth area. And so pretty much from 13 on, I was here. And so this is home for me. I go back to New Jersey and I'm like, what are you guys still doing here? Like, this is terrible existence. Except for some people. I'm like, hey, you should totally stay in New Jersey. It's amazing. Like, this is great for you.
Fort County sucks. Don't
it's
ever
a
come
terrible.
to
The
North
South is really, really bad. You should totally stay here.
Yeah.
That's funny. I would just think as a home builder, people would respect that too, that you're like from here, because with growth happening in this area, so many people are like, we don't want it to grow, especially locals. So to know that you're local and you're building houses, it creates a stronger level of trust with your customers as well, that you're not an outsider coming in, throwing up all these houses.
Yeah, we're not just one of the big box builders like the national guys, right? Like we're here locally living in it. And it is hard because a lot of people, like the way things were, right? Like the downtown Southern Pines that my wife grew up in is different than the downtown Southern Pines of today. And it's going to be different than the one in 5 or 10 years from now because like of all the growth. And there's no stopping it. Like you can't regulate it and stop it. Like the growth is coming. It just is. And so, we try to be responsible with it, and we're not, we're trying to be responsible with it, but it's coming regardless. So people just need to really just get that and understand it, and it's like, I've got 25 acres out in Foxfire that we bought that we're starting to farm on. And it's like, as the developer, the developer side of me is like, man, you could put a ton of houses here and build all this stuff. Right. And it's like, but no, I want to buy that. And I want to buy the neighbor's house or the neighbor's property just to keep it kind of as a farm, like, hey, we need farms in the community, those kinds of things, so still trying to balance that, growth responsibly. So,
yeah, we were talking about it the other day, just, everybody is talking about seeing all the trees cut down all over the place and the expansion, and with all the larger box businesses coming in, putting smaller businesses out of business, and everything that goes into to play with that. And it's just like, you want growth because you always want to be like improving. And if you don't grow, then like the younger generation is going to be like, well, I'm out of here.
Right.
Then you just have this dilapidated little town in 30 years that nobody lives in. But so it's this weird fine line that you have to walk, where it's like, I don't want to see this place become Charlotte or Raleigh.
Right. Yeah.
But I also don't want to see it become one of these small towns that it's just
run
empty
down
stores everywhere.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And I don't think it will be. We've got way too many industries here with the horses and with the Fort Bragg and with all that stuff. So I don't think it'll ever go I don't think it'll ever go that direction. Hopefully it doesn't get to where it's like a Charlotte or a Raleigh. Hopefully not. But I guess you never know. But.
I look at her all the time. I'm like, we should just move back to Charlotte, be close to family. And then we go to Charlotte and it's like, nope.
No way.
With this traffic. And
yeah.
Get it.
No, it's nuts. It's getting busy here. They're definitely have to figure out some infrastructure stuff with the roads, like how we're going to get people around a little bit better. But anyways.
So how can people, aside from buying a home, which they should definitely go out and do.
High quality, well designed,
Yes.
the best. Yeah, you should buy it.
How can other people, if they're interested in helping build a home down in Mexico, how can they help with that?
Yeah. So, man, well, I'd love to get to know you. So if you reach out to me, Joseph@Druther.homes is my email. No .com. It's just Joseph@Druther.homes. You can also check out our website, find us on Facebook. You can reach out to us and we will for sure get you pointed in the right direction. Again, I can talk with you about what you're interested in doing. If you're interested in going on a trip or just funding or whatever, like we can definitely point you in the right direction. With some of our ministry partners, or again, maybe you tag along for a trip that we're going to be doing and come right alongside our team. That would also be amazing. So that's probably the best way.
But start with buying a home.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's the easiest way to get the money
help.
funneled to help other people.
and it helps you too. So.
Right.
Yeah, it helps you. You're going to get a nice picture of a family. That you're.
It's a buy one get one situation
For sure.
It made me buy 2 of one thing the other day because it was like buy 2 get 1. I was like, okay.
Okay, it's different when it's like seltzer water. Brandon.
It works.
It works.
Yeah. So.
Oh goodness.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you coming in and sharing everything that you're doing, and
Absolutely.
sounds really awesome.
It was a blast. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right.